the Daily Wire and how it connects to what's happening over at the CW. So here's the first part of it. It says, the Daily Wire hires former Disney execs as CMO. That's Chief Marketing Officer. Yeah. So basically they hired a gentleman named Eric Caballero, who was a big-time executive over at Disney. And what we're seeing right now between this and the story with the CW is that we are seeing the collapse of mainstream old guard media and the rise of a newer form of media, which in this case would be more, would the term be isolated? Because it's so related to one belief system, if you will, with the Daily Wire. But the point is that there's money to be made in new media if you have a pitch, if you have a...
Oh, wow. Nice. Woo,
so it says the Daily Wire, the conservative media outlet founded by Ben Shapiro, has hired a Disney veteran to help grow its subscription streaming service. They have 890,000 paying members as of
I'm so distracted
June.
by the lights. I apologize.
She loves the lights. 890,000, and I'm sure that's well over 900,000 now if we're into August. So the company has tapped Eric Caballero as its new CMO, overseeing. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Brett is such a consummate professional. He's like, I'm going to talk through it. I'm like, what is happening?
I try. The company has tapped Eric Caballero as the new CMO, overseeing all marketing for the company. Particularly as it continues to invest in the entertainment business, arguing that legacy media companies like Disney have abandoned their family-friendly roots. Would you guys agree with that?
100%. And I think this is written in a very balanced way.
I was actually almost shocked by how there's actually another one about their other hire that's far less balanced. So it says, Caballero most recently worked as VP in Disney's Media and Entertainment Distribution Group. We also know that the Daily Wire just pledged $100 million to invest in children's entertainment.
I'm curious, they phrase it as most recently. Are they implying that there's some kind of gap in between?
That's
he
what I was
left
wondering.
Disney. I tried to research it a little bit before we started, and I couldn't find a clear answer if he had actually left Disney on. Because I think Daily Wire fans, hopefully this is a great thing for them. I could understand if Daily Wire fans were like, hey, we thought we were trying to get away from Disney. Or why are you hiring out from their neighborhood? This seems like a bad pick. We use someone from their bench who was involved in promoting stuff that doesn't fit our ideology that you have pledged to not do. I would be curious to hear, had he stepped away during that time intentionally.
Well, the idea here is that at a certain level, there's only so many people with experience working at that level of a corporation, right?
That's true.
And with the tone of the world the way it is now, they're offering people who may have worked for, and let's face it, a lot of people that work for these companies feel imprisoned by the politics of those companies. I don't care about the politics. I care about the fact that there's alternatives in media, in choices.
And I think that there are a lot of people who feel that way, but no, if you are working in media at this level, Disney is one of the places to be, right? Yep. It's like a pinnacle for career. They have the money, they have the resources. And Daily Wire is actually building an outlet for people who are talented professionals to leave to work for companies. Because I understand, don't work for companies that don't represent your beliefs. But on the other hand, if there's no alternative, what are you saying? Don't work in your industry?
Providing alternative options so you don't feel so alone.
Not just for the consumer, though.
I've made the joke before. It's where do you go? We work for Timcast. Where do you go from? It's well, it's PragerU or Turning Point USA or something like that. Obviously, I don't think that's
I'm going to become a housewife.
There you go. That works.
Well, I don't have that. Well, I could be a house husband.
Yeah, you could be a house husband.
If there's anybody out there.
Equality,
any
am I
ladies
right?
out there.
Thank you, feminism.
It says, among other projects, Caballero will lead marketing for the Daily Wire Plus, the company's streaming platform. Again, basically 900,000 paying subscribers. While it includes politically focused content from the Daily Wire, as well as some other conservative programming, the company is moving further into entertainment. We have Terror on the Prairie, The Hyperions, Shut In. There was a Run, Hide, Fight was one that they licensed out. Committing $100 million to produce kids and family fare and expanding into original movies, including Gina Carano's led offering Terror on the Prairie. Earlier this month, they hired Chris Sonnenberg, the showrunner on Disney's Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure, to serve as VP of animation.
That's great.
Yeah, they're pulling from all these industries. So you have to believe that, in that industry, you're we were talking earlier, you're forced to be an activist, right? So a lot of the people that stay silent, and the executives probably have an easier time staying silent than celebrities because they're not expected to have their hot takes because they're not front-facing members of these companies.
They're behind the
and
scenes.
Financially, I'm guessing you're going to find more naturally conservative people anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
In finance, right?
Yeah. What I was going to say is I think that for a long time, there were people who weren't overtly political in their own lives, right? They have their own ideology. They may not agree with things, but there's this feeling that once you leave your professional career for something that is adjacent to politics, even if it's just like you're not working for a senator, but you're working for a political industry in some way, that there's no turning back. You can't go back.
You can't go back to Disney.
But the thing is, so people felt like standard media working for big companies wasn't a political move. But as we know, and as it's become more apparent, especially over the last decade, like these companies are completely political. So you're actually already involved in politics. And like I said before, there's just not an alternative value system that has a big enough company to support someone who's operating at that level.
Yeah, basically, you can work at Disney and it's an entertainment company that's political, or you can work at the Daily Wire, which is a political company that is also
Doing
an entertainment company.
Yeah.
So, but you're only branded one way.
Yeah, but I think for a long time, people thought working at Disney or working outside of politics would allow them to operate without politics. And I unfortunately,
Not
and I
anymore.
do, yeah, I completely regret this. Like, that's not the reality. Politics is really pushed down every aspect of culture, again, under this activism paintbrush.
So here's this quote from, I believe this is a quote from Sonnenberg. It says, "I studied Disney's tradition of customer obsession, of multi-generational franchise building, and of broadening Hollywood's best talent," said this is from Caballero in a statement. "The Daily Wire is building on this blueprint successfully enough that storytellers and media executives are taking notice and signing on." So the idea here is you take their business model and you work to improve upon it through the lens of your own values. Now, the reason why I think that's important is because I also have this story. Nexstar, which is the country's largest owner of like local television stations, just bought the CW, which is the wokest of the woke stations when it comes to programming, for $0.
Wow.
They bought it, but they basically agreed to take on their debt. $100 million in debt they took on.
crap.
Also, like, go woke, get broke, right? $100 million in debt here, team.
And my point was the reason why I tied these stories together. I'm like, so let me get this straight. The CW, which is producing what's supposedly, they had IP that they were licensing out from Warner Brothers, meaning that they're using Batgirl, they're using The Flash, they're using Arrow, they're using Legends of Tomorrow. All of these famous IP-related characters, and they're $100 million in debt. But the Daily Wire, which is Ben Shapiro and a bunch of conservatives, just pledged $100 million to create content. We are seeing, in a way, like I've avoided stuff like this before because the idea of this show is not to be political. But now these realms, at least in relation to media companies, are congealing and becoming like one, right? Like it's all becoming one together. So basically 75%, they bought 75% stake, Nexstar did, in the CW. Well, Paramount Global, which is like Paramount Plus, keeps 12.5%, and Warner Brothers keeps 12.5%. Continue going forward so that they can license out their shows. They made their money basically by making their shows as cheaply as possible and licensing out the shows to like Netflix to make their money. So the idea here is they're keeping Mark Pedowitz in charge of the CW, and Nexstar says that they're going to make it profitable by 2025, to which I say, good luck. Like they axed Batgirl or Batwoman, they axed Naomi, they axed all of the Flash is getting its last season next year. All of these shows, which I have an extreme soft spot for the original 3 seasons of Arrow in season 5 and the first 2 seasons of The Flash. And they got so bad that they're getting like 400,000 views an episode. Tim gets that on like an episode of IRL with like none of the overhead of like
zero overhead.
An episode of TV costs like $8 to $10 million to make. Like imagine doing that for 400,000 viewers live and like maybe double that in DVR or like online streaming. So it's like, are we just seeing like the traditional collapse of mainstream network, still corded media, right? So people have cut the cord who use a Daily Wire to watch their entertainment because it falls in line with their values, are also probably using Netflix and things like that. It's just insane.
We have to contrast from like the days of TV back in the olden days when there were like 5 channels,
right?
And so you didn't really have that many options. Whereas like the industry grew so rapidly that you at one point like I remember going to a friend's house who had cable and it'd be like channel 500. Like it's too much. No one can consume that much content. And then it got expensive, and then streaming became an alternative platform, and then streaming had a ton of original content, and so now it becomes this thing where like you look at yourself and think, do I actually need to be subscribed to everything?
No.
At what point do I realize like I don't watch for political or ideological or just because you don't have the time and nothing appeals to you, I don't watch every single one of these platforms, so I don't need them. I think it's an interesting way to splinter the audience more than ever, and I think we'll never, in some ways I see it kind of reverting back to everyone having their own individual TV with 5 channels.
Also, except for the 5 you choose to have rather than the 5 you force to have.
Yeah.
I also want to point out something really funny. If you think about shows that are as like super woke, and again, you guys know how much I hate that term, but I don't know what else to use for that term, as Batgirl, or, as Batwoman, as Supergirl certainly grew to be. What do you think the average age range is for somebody to watch something like that? You would imagine that it would be like your typical Zoomer generation.
Yeah, young.
The average age of a CW viewer is 58 years old.
What?
Which
Do
means
they
it's
have something else that's like
insane.
Nancy Drew, The Vampire Diaries. All of these are
Or
designed
are you
for 20-year-olds,
What-
but being watched by 60-year-olds.
See, sometimes I wonder how that's calculated. Just hear me out, because like if you're 16, you're probably not paying for your own cable bill. I
Yeah.
mean, most people aren't. So like, is it
Well,
coming
that's
up as
through
like
if it's Nielsen, then they do surveys.
right? I don't know.
Then
That's-
of course, then the
Although I
16-year-old
do
would
know
have to
a
pick
lot
up
of
the
people
phone.
who like are on Twitter, like, did you see what happened on this episode of whatever? Who get
Yeah.
like weirdly obsessed with teen shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like they're not for teens anymore. They're for adults who like to watch like YA books.
creepier.
YA books are now made for adults who grew up reading YA.
permanent childhood.
They consider YA a genre, not just something for young adults, but it's its own genre that they, even though they're no longer young adults, enjoy reading,
style
and that
of novel.
translates into
Yeah.
the media.
Ugh.
So.
Yuck.
It is funny to me because you would watch these channels and it's so politically. So like I was like, where did those viewers come from anyways? Because it's not like a bunch of people like Mary's age are watching network television on a regular
Oh,
basis.
definitely
If Mary
not.
was here, I highly doubt she would be like, yes, I sit down and watch regular TV all the time.
There was a
sure
survey
she does
done,
not.
I think almost 5 years ago at this point, that was to ask like how if it asked like teenagers and young adults, if you had to give up one social media platform, which one would you be unwilling to give up?
Instagram.
And no, YouTube. Tons of
Oh, they
them.
consider YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay,
They,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing about YouTube. People don't always consider it a
I
social
do not
media
consider it a
platform.
social media platform.
But in some surveys, it is included, and because it produces so much content, like I bet there are teenagers who absolutely would never sit down and turn on the TV. But you know what they would turn on? 87 vlogs, or
Yeah.
whatever like they're interested in on YouTube. In some ways, like YouTube was the leader in the streaming platform realm because it was much more customizable content. You could search for what you wanted to
It's
see.
like saying is a taco a sandwich?
Yeah.
No.
Controversial.
No.
No,
Very
I
but
don't
people
argue
feel
with
like
that.
it is because it is so factored into, again, influencer marketing.
And the funny thing is, the other when I think about it more, like the shows like Supernatural did very, very well, but like we have people like Sarah here who love that show, who's younger. Like people love that show, but also like they made like a Walker Texas Ranger reboot.
That's great.
Like no, but like I don't buy that. Like, is the goal there to like put hot young people in it so that supposedly younger people will watch, but only somebody like with an AARP card is going to know what the hell Walker Texas Ranger is,
Right.
anyways.
Is
So-
Walker Texas Ranger still a white man in this reboot?
Yeah, actually, it is.
Interesting.
It was one of the dudes from Supernatural who ended up playing him. Like,
Oh, fascinating.
so. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.